Salahuddin. So, meet my producer, who's also going to be my chai deliverer. Can you please bring me my chai, buddy? Thanks.
It'll be interesting to have him in there as well in one of these podcasts.
You should do one with Salahuddin, Hamza, like that. What are you doing with your life? Do one about what are you going to do with your life?
I thought that's what we were doing today.
I know, but like with the kids.
Okay. So, Jazakallah khair, everybody, for being here, blah, blah, blah. Inshallah, like, I really want it to be a very casual, chill kind of a conversation. Don't get me wrong, I've definitely over-prepared. Like,
but you told us not to prepare, so I kind of...
Oh, but okay. I'm
you
supposed
did,
to prepare. I'm
but
supposed
we
to prepare.
came
I'm
in...
way over-prepared.
Are you introducing us? Are we introducing ourselves?
No, I'll introduce.
Okay, don't say too much about me. I feel like you went through my LinkedIn and you did a thing. You did.
I did. I totally did. No, but I kept it really short.
I'm not as young as you think I am.
He's 10 years younger than us?
Easy, at least.
I'll be 40 soon.
Bacha. He's a bacha.
He's a bacha, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Imagine what they can say about you.
Yes. Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and get started. All right. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا وأملا متقبلا اللهم بارك لنا في هذه المجلس وأجعله سببا للخير والهداية. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful, O Allah, we seek you for your knowledge that benefits, a heart that is humble, and actions that are accepted by you. Guide our words, our intentions, and our reflections so they may bring benefit and unity to all who listen. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome everybody to another episode of You Tell Me, a Canadian Muslim podcast. I'm your host, Khurram Rashid. I just want to take a sec before we get into it too much. This is still a very young, very new project. We barely put out a few episodes, but alhamdulillah, the support that we've gotten, I thoroughly appreciate. The comments that I've gotten, the discussions that I've been able to have as a result of them, they've been so amazing. So inshallah, just continue to make dua, and any support that you're able to provide, we would love to have you. Today, inshallah, we are talking about a topic that is very important to us, Islamic education in the West. What does it mean to raise children with deen in a secular environment? What role do Islamic schools play? Are they fulfilling their purpose? And if not, what can we do about it? The goal, inshallah, isn't to rant and complain, but ideally, this conversation will be more about reflection and contemplation. I want everyone to almost think of it like a thoughtful diagnostic, almost like a consultant coming into an organization and helping you reassess things. So we want to understand what's working, what's not working, and if not, what can we do about it? And to be fair, I just want to acknowledge this. We've already seen real progress. There are, mashallah, the last time I checked, well over 60 full-time Islamic schools in Ontario. And then some of them, there is Al-Manarat, Iqra, Safa Marwa, the ISNA High School, mashallah, they consistently rank among the top schools in Ontario. So, and then there's HIFZ programs. Islamic Foundation has an amazing one. There's the Ajax Madrasa, and they continue to reproduce Hufad that are now serving our community, reading Taraweeh, leading Salat, teaching Quran, all that sort of stuff. But I do believe that that also means that it's time for us to ask some of the harder questions. What's missing? Where are the cracks? And why do some students thrive while others drift? Thrive, drift. I feel like that's how that tends to go. Okay, so let's move on to our guest. I'll start with my friend, my brother, my teacher, Sheikh Adnan. He's a graduate of Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University in Riyadh with a bachelor in Sharia, Islamic law. He studied under scholars from India, Yemen, and Al-Ahsa during his time there as well. And now he continues to teach and support the Muslim community here in Canada through youth programs and halaqas. Outside of Islamic education, just as a hobby, he just also happens to be a senior UX designer and strategist, just to fill his time a little bit. Ustadji, great to have you here, sir. Next, we have a close family friend, Sister Kausar Tahir. She is a clinical pharmacist, entrepreneur, and mother of 3. With over 2 decades of experience in healthcare. She was, alhamdulillah, born and raised here in Mississauga. She's made education decisions for her children in both Ontario and then after her family moved to Qatar over there. And I feel like it really gives her a unique perspective on Islamic schooling across different cultural contexts. Welcome to the show, sister.
Thank you so much.
And then finally, our very special guest is this very handsome man over here, Isam Ehsan. Isam is a business student in Calgary, entering his final semester in supply chain management. He attended the Olive Grove Islamic School here in Ontario before moving to the public school system in Alberta, and is now pursuing Hifz, teaching Quran, and inshallah also hoping to study at the Islamic University of Medina starting in 2026. Welcome to the podcast, bud.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. How's everyone doing? Hopefully it's a good start to the weekend, huh? Or the end of the weekend.
End to the weekend.
Right. I forgot it was Sunday. Wallahi, I thought it was Saturday today. I'm not even lying.
Okay.
It's been my wife's been a little annoyed because I've been a little obsessive about preparing for this thing. Like I said, I've over prepared.
Yeah.
So I don't know what day it is at all. So
It's all good.
So as a start to the conversation, what I would love to be able to do is sort of try and define where we are, what the actual problem is. Islamic education, really any form of education, tries to serve a lot of purpose. And I know I'm somebody who is always at a risk of oversimplification. So that's what I'm going to do here today. I'm going to try and oversimplify. And in my head, I thought that I was able to narrow it down to two primary functions that I feel like an Islamic school should provide. Again, not ignoring everything else that it does. One is to ideally prepare the masses of our community, most of us that will never grow up to become scholars. They'll become doctors, engineers, teachers, parents, whatever else might be, social workers, business owners. And we want to be able to provide them with a basic foundational knowledge, a foundational understanding of, well, what my deen is. I should know how to pray. I should need my du'as, basic sharia, basic fiqh concepts, without having to go too much into details of it. And we should be equipped to live our lives day to day. And then all the details of it are all encompassing. The second objective, the way I see it, it should be almost like, I was giving this example to somebody on the phone the other day, almost like a farm system, to steal a sports terminology, is create a pipeline for anyone who wants to further their education and go onto that route of becoming a scholar and providing our community with teaching, leadership, guidance, whatever it might be. So my first question to the group, and Sheikh, why don't I start with you? When you look at this system, the Islamic education as it exists right now, how would you define what it really should be doing? Not necessarily focusing on the problems, but what really should be the objective of an Islamic education system?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So, I like how you defined it, right? So, is it one of the first questions I would have asked is, what is our reference point? How are we measuring if it's doing its job? So if we are defining its job as a source that teaches the masses the basics about their deen, so that by the time they come out or while they're in it, the Muslim child that's in that program or school knows his basic fara'id, his basic fiqh, for example. So by the time he comes out, he knows his basics. I think then it's doing its job. Now, if you're talking about providing or creating a pipeline or a funnel or like a baseline for people to then go take it somewhere else, probably not, right? Or to say, do we really need that purpose right now? Like, have we perfected the first element for us to now move on to the second element? But at a base level, if it provides people enough so that, or when I say people, I mean kids, right? Enough for them to know their fara'id, right? And it can assure the parents that, okay, my kids are learning the basics of their deen. I don't have to monitor the situation as much, right? Obviously, in practicality, it doesn't end up happening that way. But if it can provide that, I think it's doing its job at a base level.
Jazakallah khair. So, Sister Kausar, when you were choosing schooling for your children, whether here in Ontario, when you went to Qatar, what were some of the criteria that you were looking for? What were you hoping the Islamic school would do for your kids?
So I think when you touched on it, like covering the basics, right? But I wasn't really looking at Islamic school to replace what I was doing at home. I was looking at it to supplement what I was doing at home. And I think it's interesting because my kids have had the privilege of trying a lot of different things.
Right.
We've done private Islamic school, we've done public school. I tried to homeschool. It wasn't something that I wanted to continue with. Like you said, there's so many Islamic school options now. And growing up, there was one for me. There was just the ISNA one near Dixie. And I used to go there for summer school, and there was Sunday school, but there wasn't a lot of options. And I feel for me, if I was looking at me growing up and what I would like to see now, is that system helping kids build their Muslim identity.
Right.
Like being comfortable being Muslim, being comfortable in your own skin, being proud to be Muslim. I think if that's something else that I would like to add, not just the basics, but be proud in who you are. So I think it is serving that purpose now. I mean, my kids have experienced that, and I think it definitely did help lay a foundation.
Right, because schooling really, I mean, and this is something that comes up all the time, where because our schools are so influenced by the Western education systems, there's way too much focus on the metrics of it, right? How many enrollments, what grades are they getting, how many people are graduating, what our ranking is, rather than the impact that school should be having.
Yes. I feel like Islamic schools have a hard task because they're having to, satisfy all those secular requirements of school.
Right.
And then adding Islamic education on a different budget, right? It's a lot. You're right. They should be fostering that curiosity, and maybe that would work on the funnel, right? Because if we're fostering kids who are excited to learn about their deen, maybe they might pursue it later on.
Right, exactly.
I personally don't see that.
And in all honesty, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have a little bit of a theoretical conversation to start off with, because we know that there are very genuine issues that our Islamic schools face. The fact that they've achieved as much as they have, in all honesty, it's to be commended and to be appreciated and applauded.
Yep.
But if we're going to take it to the next level, we should at least be able to write down, regardless of whether it's happening or not, what should be happening, right? What should be the really ultimate goal? Because, so I'm going to come to you for a moment. Outside of your Islamic education, you are studying supply chain management, right? Inshallah, you will go to your Medina University. Inshallah, may Allah guide you and give you the opportunity to become a scholar or a teacher. But why are you studying supply chain management? I'm going to pick on you a little bit, sorry.
Okay, this is a weird question because I didn't expect it. So it started off with, I need to do something for university, and I wasn't fully committed to Islamic education just yet. I wasn't very motivated in high school, so I didn't have great grades, so I ended up in business school, just because it was the best thing I could get into based on what I had. And supply chain management seemed like the least boring option to me. Genuinely, there's no deep reason for this, right? The reason why I continued studying it when I decided I wanted to do Islamic education instead of switching completely and not finishing the degree, which is what some people did, is just so that I have that background, that in case I want to work just to keep my options open, and no very deep reason for it at all.
No, I believe you are, in all honesty, an anomaly. Alhamdulillah, a great anomaly, because you also considered Islamic education and you're pursuing that direction. The vast majority of our children in this generation, and it's been like that probably for 100-something years, pick stuff like supply chain management or computer science or finance or engineering, because that's where the career opportunities are. That's where, because the job of an education is to be able to get into a good university, so you get a good job, so you get a good wife, so you can buy a nice car, right? And the question that I'm really trying to explore here, and it doesn't really even have to be just about Islamic education, it may just be an education discussion, is do we as a people truly understand what the purpose of education really is, right? Where are the kids who study humanities or arts or social sciences? Where are teachers coming from? Where are social workers coming from? Where are our journalists coming from? Right? Obviously, Salahuddin is one. By the way, everybody, Salahuddin is my producer. He's back there. No one can see him, and that's by design. Right? There are these areas that need to get filled, and unless we can have a broader conversation on what the purpose of education is, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to serve our community and our societies. If we can't do that, then what are we even doing here? Right? Adnan, in your experience teaching young people here, how would you describe the general community mindset around education? Do you feel like we're focusing on character and understanding?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I'm leaning towards a no, but at the same time, there is the ability of, I mean, look, think about our basic survival needs, right? A life that's smooth and a life that's okay. There's nothing wrong with wishing that or wanting that, right? So, and that need is always going to come before this need of like trying to pursue education for the sake of education, right? So when you talk about Islamic education, one of the things that we were taught, or it was kind of grilled down, if you inshallah, when you go to Medina, I'm sure it will be the same case for you. Whereas you're pursuing Islamic education for nothing except for yourself. That's it, nothing.
Right.
Except for yourself. You're taking away ignorance, right? You're solving the ignorance that's in you, and that's it. Everything else that comes afterwards, it's all secondary. And the whole pursuit of Islamic education is a lifelong journey. So you'll be in Medina for a set amount of years, or if you go to Azhar, you'll be in Azhar for a set amount of years. But that journey continues. So you notice doesn't quite fit with forget the Western model, just the way the world operates in general, right? Like you're gonna need a job, you have to have a family, you have to provide for that family, and your family shouldn't have to suffer because you made this decision to sacrifice for the rest of your life to pursue Islamic studies. Sorry, so automatically the question, the discussion of economics will come into play, right? Now come back to the Western context. You have to think of economics. It's just not practical to tell masses, don't think about economics, think about education, and treat education as like, what you're benefiting your soul. The economic discussion is always going to be there. So that's why I think we're not seeing people in the humanities and in the liberal arts, etc. It's a natural occurrence.
Right.
I don't know if I answered that question.
No, alhamdulillah, I feel like you did. But okay, so I'm going to drill down into that just a little bit. Is if I were to bring it within our Islamic context again, within the Islamic school context, that obviously the economic aspect of it is very understandable and a very genuine piece. So then what can Islamic schools hope to be able to do? What should their objectives be, you think, considering all that?
Yeah. So if we already are operating from the premise that it's going to act as a funnel, right? Let's say if it acts as a funnel, only a select few will actually go on to pursue Islamic education at a higher level. So what does it need to do for most of the people, most of its subjects? It should be able to give them the basics. They should be able to live their life according to the deen. And I think the sister touched on a very important point. They should have the confidence, right? So one of the questions I was asking him earlier is that once you left the Islamic school, did it give you enough to protect your deen, right? At high school, and maybe at high school your deen is not really in trouble as much, right? It's only in university and you start to get that much of that information, right? You're more exposed to atheism, you're more exposed to something called critical thinking, as if the rest of the world doesn't use critical thinking at all, right? Like this assumption.
Brother, it's not, that doesn't happen in first year university anymore. Now it happens in grade 9.
So there you go.
Much earlier.
So I feel like Islamic studies. I keep using Islamic studies, but Islamic schools should offer that. Should be able to at least do that at a baseline level, right? And that's more critical than teaching them you need to pray. This is farad, then this is, because this will keep them in Islam. Versus if you taught them fara'id, but you didn't teach them that very basic stuff, then they're going to face all that shubuhat, the doubts and stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. So what role, we understand that really raising kids cannot be left on an institution. Parents have to play a role, and it's very important for parents to play a role. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the right way of doing it. However, one of the challenges that model presents is, look, fact of the matter is, parents can never all look at things the same way. So one parent will have great education, other one won't. One will have a solid background, one won't. People may be coming from economic backgrounds, broken homes, a lot of context there. So what a parent teaches their kid could vary greatly. And that's why institutions exist, to try and cover some of that gap or standardize some of that learning. So ideally, based on your experience, what role should a parent really be playing, and how much should they be working with the schools?
I was thinking about this earlier, like, because my wife has a lot of complaints about Islamic schools because her nephews are in there. But then I thought about it. I'm like, okay, what is the essential job of Islamic school? Like, is it what you're expecting?
So for me, I think growing up here, where it was predominantly one demographic and there was very few children of color, let alone Muslims, right? I was like the first kindergarten class of a public school that is like in a very old neighborhood now. Okay. You can count the number of Muslim kids on one hand. Three of them were me and my brothers, right? So there was not a lot of Muslims around. So I feel like for me growing up, it was that Muslim identity. And I'm very grateful that my parents did send me to, ISNA for summer schools. And we had a Sunday school that started up to fill those gaps. I still feel that Muslim identity it needs to be addressed, even though we have so many options.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing
That's
that we have options.
Say, right? Yeah.
So when you're saying how should parents work with schools, I'm gonna take a different perspective because I've tried different things. Not by design, it's just the way it happened, right? One of them was we wanted to get into an Islamic school that had a very long wait list and it never worked out. I was talking to Salahuddin about that.
I'm guessing Olive Grove?
Olive Grove. Okay. And it didn't work out for various reasons, right? Either we weren't in the country or when I was in the country, they're like, the wait list is too long. I couldn't clone myself. I have 3 kids. I didn't want to do multiple schools. But I think in terms of the basics, I really do feel that's the parent's job. It really is. Like the Islamic teaching needs to come from home. That tarbiyah needs to come from
agree.
home.
Yeah.
I mean, I have family who's worked in Islamic schools. I have friends who've worked in Islamic schools. I think innately all parents want to do what's best for their children. But to have a checklist to be like, okay, Islamic education. Okay, I'm just going to send my kid to Islamic school or some Islamic extracurricular. Check. That means I'm done. It's not going to work. It's actually a recipe for disaster. And it affects now the demographic of the students that are going to school. So I would say comes from home. If you choose or you're in a situation where you can do Islamic school and you wanted to supplement what you're doing at home, great, do it. If for whatever reason, I feel like there's a lot of judgment in our community about who does what for their kid. Like I said, I think all parents are doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. There are some parents, because of the economics, cannot do private school. I have met kids who are public school kids, mashallah.
Amazing
kids.
Mm-hmm.
I've met homeschool kids who are mashallah amazing. That wasn't for me. My kids thrived. It wasn't for me. I've met kids from the Islamic school system, like mashallah, who have turned out amazing. And then you hear the stories of those who have struggled, right? You find what works for your kid. What if you put your kid in an Islamic school and they're not happy socially, mentally, emotionally? What do? Do you keep them there because it's an Islamic school?
You don't, because I'll tell you my own experience with that. Both my kids started off in Islamic school. We discovered that Salahuddin back there was struggling a little bit around grade 3.
Okay.
And after working with the school, I realized that these guys don't know how to handle his specific challenges.
They don't?
They just don't. And a lot of the reasons was simply because, so the school that we went to, the school that your son went to, I'm not going to name the name, they were very good about trying to maintain a relatively lower cost to allow people to be able to send their children to Islamic school.
Yes.
Right? And actually, to be honest with you, at that stage of my life, if it wasn't for that, my kids would not have been going to Islamic school. So I was very appreciative of the fact that they were working so hard at keeping the cost low. But because of that, there was no computer lab, there was no gym, there was no proper library. The teachers had an insane turnover rate because they weren't able to pay their teachers very well. they ended up inevitably having to hire teachers who may not have gone to teachers college or very new graduates. They did not have a lot of experience. So any curveballs, as long as it was a very easy child who sat there quietly and listened to them, they were wonderful. As soon as the child got even slightly complicated, they had no idea how to handle that situation, right?
I would say not just this school. If you look at even the more expensive Islamic schools, right? They're not equipped to deal with the gifted kids or the kids who need extra support. So it doesn't work for everybody. So, and that's okay if it doesn't work for everybody. Public school, I mean, I think they're struggling with that as well because of sheer numbers. But again, you pick the situation or the school setup that works best for your kid. You can probably have a family of like 4 kids, each in a different system. And doing completely
Which
fine.
you've had, by the way, I know.
Yes, I have had. There was one year in Qatar, I had literally one kid in a different school. We had 3 school runs. It was a logistical nightmare, but it was the happiest that my kids were.
Amazing.
Would I do that again? No, because it was a logistical nightmare. But I mean, I also have friends who one kid's in Islamic school, one kid's staying at home, doesn't want to. They're homeschooling him or her. They're both fine. I mean, you pick what works for your kid. I just wish the community would stop. I mean, it's hard enough to be a parent.
Very difficult.
Right? I feel like we had our easier time growing up because we didn't have so many pressures, right? So add that. And now parenting this generation, I mean, this is hard.
So, alhamdulillah, so I grew up in Riyadh. At that time, yeah, fine. If you go off the rails, it's a very limited road of how far you can go off the rails.
No,
right?
In Riyadh.
How are you gonna
Right. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Right. And as you grow up, as you mature, those problems, will hopefully go away. Don't always. But when we came here, Ahmed Salim and I were having this conversation. The best thing that could have happened to us was we were so uncool in high school that we had to sort of stick together and preserve our own deen. That
what
saved
a blessing.
us so much.
What a blessing. Yeah. Right? Not, you didn't think of it as a blessing then, but what a blessing.
Oh, no. At that time, it was horrible. Right? But so we did have an easier time. You're right about that. And honestly, talking to my own kids, talking to any kids, the challenges that these kids are facing, oh my God, like we can't even imagine. A long time ago, a teacher of mine told me this, that when your kids come home, and if you're a great father, great, amazing, award-winning father, you will get on average 15 minutes a day to teach your children something, actually impart genuine knowledge to support them. And in that 15 minutes, you're battling 6 hours of school, 2 hours of TV, 2 hours of Instagram, 3 hours of friends. All put together is probably like 30 hours worth of content that you're trying to manage in 15 minutes of time. That's a good parent on average, right? Because life is so busy. So you need to do a lot of effort on how you're spending that 15 minutes. How are you utilizing it? You need to be structured and planned and think about it. Like it's going to take a lot of work. So the stuff that they're facing, we can't even fathom. We can't even imagine. We need to put a lot of work into learning what they're dealing with.
Exactly. And that's why, back to the actual question, if we're looking at Islamic school to fill that gap,
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. It has to be the parent. Now, should the parent work with the Islamic school? Of course.
Right.
Right? I mean, if you're sending your child to Islamic school or public school,
right,
you need to be an advocate for your child and you need to have good communication with that school to make sure that your kid is okay. But to say that, okay, I'm going to send my kid to Islamic school, now so that gap's filled, how do I work with them? It's supposed to be the other way around. Right?
That's true. However, I'll tell you what's happening here, though. You're a parent and you're taking a lot of responsibility, and you should. And that part is okay. But my question is, if I'm in Islamic school, should I not have a very similar attitude to what you're having and say I should take a lot of the responsibility? And what should I do? I should ask myself, well, what is my role in this?
So you're speaking on behalf of
I'm pretending in this moment to be the building.
You're the building. Okay. Yes. I mean, listen, if you are enrolling children and you're taking fees, right? Then yes, you have a certain responsibility to the community to deliver on what you've promised. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, Isam, let me ask you, you are, mashallah, doing your hifz, teaching, children Quran at that same location, I'm
Yeah.
guessing, right? And you are aspiring to go for higher education. Where did that inspiration come from?
Okay, so this built up over time. I can give you my whole life story, but I think that'll be a bit too much. In Olive Grove, the environment was all Muslims. Now, back home, these people had different levels of religiosity within their houses. And looking back, I can see that now. I didn't see it as much then. But one of the things which shocked me was when I went into public school for the first time, and there wasn't that bubble where, okay, now you're in Islamic school mode, now you're in home mode. Now everyone's acting the way they act at home. Everyone's acting with whoever they really are, right?
Right.
So now you see Muslims who are not really practicing, right? You see someone with a Muslim name, you invite him to come pray, he doesn't want to come pray. You say we're having Jummah during class time, and he gets the slip signed by his parents, and he uses it to skip class. He doesn't come to the prayer.
Right.
All this stuff. That was my first sort of motivation. I want to help these people. I don't know how. I don't know what to tell them because I don't know myself how to deal with what their issue is. I don't know how this came up. I don't know how to deal with this if I was in their situation.
Right.
So that was the sort of the starting point. And then as it came up, like as I grew older, I have friends from Islamic school, and that's because of my parents. Like she was saying, there's a lot of parent influence. My parents facilitated a lot of the successes at Islamic school for me, and one of those was my friend group. And these guys are also relatively religious. My parents found people who had religious families. We had I had religious friends, and they had these similar issues, and they found themselves inclined towards education, and they started mentioning things, and I started looking into it, and slowly I got more interested. I got caught up in the online Islamic education scene, which is a disaster. But I was there, and it did motivate me, for better or worse. It did motivate me. And I had a question about something I came across, and I asked a local sheikh because I just didn't know who else to ask. And he was telling me, why are you involved in this stuff? What's going on here? Like, stop it. Come memorize Quran, learn Arabic, do this stuff first. I did that. I made connections within the Muslim community, and I realized, okay, all these problems that I saw in public school, these people who are in the masjid every day, they don't have these problems.
Right.
These people have their lives together. When they speak to people, they speak to people differently. The way I wish I could have spoken to these people, they're speaking to me that way, right?
Mhm.
The way I wish I could have helped these people come pray, come do this. They're inviting me to read Quran that way, and so now I have a group of role models, my age, younger than me, older than me, people who I think you guys are amazing, right? And so I started making connections with these people, and I think the final thing for me, the thing which fully motivated me, I want to go and study Sharia or study Islam, was I was at a conference, and I was already studying supply chain management at this point. I was in my second year, and there was a speaker. He was speaking about Khalid ibn al-Walid radiyallahu anhu, and he was saying that the Prophet ﷺ, he sent a letter to he had Walid ibn Walid send a letter to Khalid, his brother, and ask him why he wasn't joining them, and telling them how the Prophet could use his help in battle, because Khalid was of course
Right.
a military expert. And he was saying, in whatever field you're in, and this kind of ties back to education and what the goal of education is. Whatever field you choose to go into, be so good in that field that if the Prophet ﷺ needed someone in the city in that field, he would look at you.
Right.
And I was thinking, okay, I'm studying supply chain management. I find this extremely boring. I don't care. I don't want to work hard. This is not where I belong. I'm never
Right.
gonna be the top here. Not that I couldn't be. I don't want to be. I don't care. Since I have this motivation to help people and to teach myself, to satisfy my own curiosity and like teach myself the religion, and then help others with whatever they're facing, I feel like that's something I actually care about.
Right.
And I thought, if I were to work hard in something and try to make myself the best version of myself and the best towards the top in that field, it would be in that sector rather than in what I'm studying right now in the secular education. So that was my final motivation, I would say. But it
Alhamdulillah,
built
and
up.
that's an amazing story, Isam. I love that story. What I find interesting about that story is that a lot of that self-reflection, a lot of that learning and realizing what you can do and what you may want to do came after you were already in public school and then in university.
Yes.
Right? My son played baseball when he was, when he was younger. He played hockey when he was younger. I've met other family friends and whose kids have gone. Every single one of his teammates, every one of them wanted to play in the MLB or the NHL. Every single one of them. They all sucked. None of them were going to be able to do it. But every single one of them had dreams of playing in the MLB.
Okay.
Okay? What do you think your school could have done differently for you to want to be a scholar in grade 3 or 4 or 7 or whatever it might be, right? Like, why did it have to wait until after for you to go and contemplate and think and like, oh, maybe I can do this? It wasn't a thing during your elementary education.
So that pipeline you mentioned earlier about, Islamic schools should have this pipeline towards scholarship or towards higher Islamic education, that doesn't exist in Islamic schools. The pipeline exists in many places. Islamic schools is not one of them at all, right? The only sort of connection you could make is that I had friends from the Islamic school who found that pipeline in other ways, and they sort of dragged me with them, right?
Okay, so I'm actually going to cut you off for a second because I want to get to you in a moment about that pipeline conversation you're having. But I want to just ask one question: is if you're saying that that pipeline exists in many other places, where?
So online Islamic education is one place. That's a very problematic pipeline. There's a lot of issues with that pipeline. Don't take it, but it does exist there. And if you can get out of it, then you can see. Then you'll have a good perspective. But it exists there. It exists with connections a lot of the time. If you have someone who studied or someone who wants to study, that's very helpful, right? So, for example, with my friends, I have some people who want to study as well, or some people who've been studying longer than me, some people who are just getting into it now, and they'll tell me, "Oh, I have this sheikh who taught me this," and then now I'll learn from them. Or there's this class here, come to this class, and they'll bring you into it, and that sort of builds motivation over time. So that was one of my better pipelines, was the through connections, and that'll happen. I should add this at the masjid, and I think having connections at the masjid or in these Islamic environments is very important, especially for youth, because again, for me, the big thing was having Muslim friends growing up. So I think having that Islamic environment at the masjid with sheikhs around, with people who have studied, is very important. And I think if you want to have that option open, if you want to keep that pipeline open for your kids or for something like that, that's an environment which they should probably be in my opinion.
Wonderful. Okay, so obviously we moved away from the Islamic school, moved on to the higher education pipeline. If I were to make a statement saying and let's just talk about GTA for the moment. Okay, let's not talk about all of North America, just GTA. If I were to make a statement saying we do not have enough qualified scholars in our community to lead us and teach us, would I be accurate?
I would say so. Yeah, we are accurate.
So then that brings in the pipeline conversation, and it's going to feel weird because we're going to talk about teachers and scholars in kind of a crude manner, right? But where are we acquiring these people from? Is it possible for them to be educated and produced locally, or do we have to import?
So before we have that conversation, what's qualified? What does it mean to be qualified?
That's a great question. I'm looking to you for an answer.
Yeah.
To that.
So I would describe, again, like scholarship, who's a scholar, these things do differ based on time and place, right? So it really depends on the demand and what's available. So a person can be a scholar in one setting, he's just a student in another setting, which is the case for most people coming back to study in the West. Most of us who come back and now are called ustad, sheikhs, we're just students back home. But having said that, there are a handful of scholars in the West. It's just that they're far and few. And then you have a bunch of people, or I'll say most people, who are kind of managing their khutbahs, and there's a real need for that, right? Managing their khutbahs or certain halaqas that they're not really qualified, right? So qualification in the Western context, I would say people that have studied to some extent. I would put Arabic in there somewhere, because if you can't access scholarship, how are you connecting with the people? How are you connecting them to scholars? So I would categorize those things, right? And understanding the deen is the priority here.
So, but again, comes right back to, well, where are we getting them? We know, can we get them by going to Al-Maghrib classes or to CIK and study here? Would that be a source where we might be able to get some of that education? Would that help us be considered qualified? Or do we have to go overseas?
Yeah, I'm going to sound a little controversial here when I say no. I don't think it fills the need. I do think it adds value to the space, no doubt. I'm a product of Al-Maghrib. Al-Maghrib kind of provided that identity. It ignited that passion to go abroad and seek knowledge. But if I didn't go abroad, if I just stayed stuck around here, that's it. Al-Maghrib is just a weekend course, and it taught me with my basics, and And that's it. And you can kind of argue, okay, well, they're doing that, right? They're fulfilling the basics, but they're not producing. I don't think they're going to produce. And I don't think we're in a situation where, and we had this conversation in the halakha as well, right? Does it make more sense to put our resources now to send some of our kids who are have potential? They have potential. Should we send them to the East and have them study and make sure they're taken care of? They don't have to worry about finances while they're there.
Right.
Versus, do we now put our resources here and think that somehow we're going to start to produce homegrown scholarship that's just going to match with the East, right? And I think we're not there yet. This pipeline of people going to the East and connecting with scholars, it's going to have to continue.
Right.
For us to keep bringing in more scholarship.
Okay, so just for the sake of argument, does that model create a risk where we end up with teachers who don't really understand the context of our lived reality? They're coming from abroad. They may have learned, studied, and they may not have even grown up here. They may have come from somewhere else, India, Pakistan, Middle East, whatever, gone to Medina University, gotten the education, and then come to Canada. They don't have the background. They don't have the understanding. And sometimes even if they're going from here, they've now learned there, coming back. Do we run the risk of being in a position where our leaders don't understand our problems?
I think we'll always run that risk. And I think that the way to mitigate that risk is we have, like Isaac Assam, for example, who brought up here, raised here, and he goes abroad, studies, and comes back. He can relate to the context here. But if we start to kind of, like, what's the flip side of that? Sure, we have risk of some people coming back and it takes them a while to get used to the community and understand the nuances, right? But if you cut off that pipeline, you cut off that connection.
Right.
Now you've cut off your connection to traditional scholarship. And now you're kind of on your own.
That's reasonable. No, and again, so at some point in time, it's going to become a conversation about volume and stats and what's possible, right? So where do we want to put more resources? We don't have to eliminate resources from any specific area. We don't have to say, let's cut off that pipeline entirely. Let's not send anybody abroad. But if we want to say, okay, let's focus on one solution. What if we were talking about, okay, let's take examples of Al-Maghrib, Miftah Institute, Center for Islamic Knowledge, where we're sitting here today, and let's try to have a conversation around standardizing curriculums, updating curriculums, inserting relevant topics that we're talking about right now, whether it be Arabic or fiqh or Sharia or usul fiqh or whatever it might be, inserting some of those topics into their curricula. Where do you see that our resources would be better spent working on improving our local infrastructure or improving our pipeline of people going abroad?
It has to be both.
Right.
It has to be a mix of both. And I feel like what you're saying with the CIK, Al-Maghrib, etc., it's a step in the right direction. And you can shorten the timeline, for example, right? So when I went abroad, I didn't know Arabic. But if I was able to learn Arabic here, now once I land in Saudi Arabia or Azhar, wherever, I can connect with scholars much faster, right? So they're not going to tell me, come back after a while once you can speak Arabic at a certain level. Right, so there are ways to bridge the gap, and we should work on both of these areas simultaneously. And I think that's where it's going. We just have to stop looking at it from a replacement perspective, and like you said, from how can we complement each other?
Right.
How can we help each other?
Okay. So I'm so sorry, both of you. I'm going to stick with this person right here. Is how do we create more Islams? Right. My theory is that the way we do it is we have this infrastructure, this foundation of Islamic schools that has thousands of children go through that system on a regular basis. And also understanding that we tend to live in a bit of a bubble where we live with people who are sending their kids to Islamic schools. The vast majority of the Muslim community, even in the GTA, is not. Some because they don't feel like Islamic schools are quote unquote good enough, so they don't fulfill their needs. other have other, theological differences that they may not want to send them to. So we have a small minority of people sending them into that system, but still it's a massive system. There's a lot of kids going through it. To me, it makes a lot of sense to say, well, that's where the pipeline should come from. We should work on building that pipeline. Do you think there's could that potentially work? And B, is there a good alternative available?
I agree with you that I think because we have so many kids in the school system, in the Islamic school system, that's a gold mine for us to now think about how some of these kids will go on to do bigger things.
Not
right?
all of them.
Yeah.
Small minority of them.
Correct.
Still.
So just like, I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is like the public system has this gifted program, right? Right? For us, it's not really a gifted program necessarily. But the direction I'm going here is that you can identify some of these kids and put them in a more specialized track. Just like in high school, we had they had the college track and the college math and the academic math, and then somehow, yeah, like some teachers try to convince you should go to college math for no apparent reason. You're doing fine in academic math. They're like, why? Why am I going to close my doors right from grade 10, right, when I can have all these options? Maybe something like that, where you can identify some of these kids and you put them in additional programming and prepare them for it.
I don't think it's the Islams. I really don't. I think, let's give credit to his parents, right? Big time. I think it's very mature that he's able to self-reflect even at his age to be like, I don't like supply chain and this is not my calling. No, but that's huge.
Right.
I mean, we know people in our age gap who are still plugging along at their job, don't like it, not their passion, they're doing it, right? And they're not going to change career. So the fact that he's able to be like, I don't want to do this, let me pick something I'm passionate about, I think that's amazing. I think that shows that he must have some open communication support from his parents. Right. So when kind of tying back into the economics of things, well, let's add a bit of culture, South Asian culture. We're like, okay, these are your options for higher education. Mm-hmm. So you're going to pick one of these tracks. I think our generation is going to change that. I really do.
Inshallah,
I think we are going to allow our kids to explore what their passions are. But I think you can find talented kids in the community, regardless of what school that they're in. Definitely, easier to find the gifted kids in the Islamic school.
Right.
But I think it's finding those families who value it.
I'll tell you where I run into a challenge. And don't get me wrong, I agree with what you're saying. Because the parental influence is massive.
Yeah.
Where I'm concerned is where that solution may not be, quote unquote, enough.
No.
Is because our biggest challenge at this point in time today, really, if we don't take it seriously, is volume. We need, our community is growing at an exponential pace.
Yes, agreed.
Exponential pace.
Yeah.
We don't have enough people. If you go talk to some of our imams who even do counseling, marriage counseling or other types of counseling, they're overwhelmed. They're dying. Right?
This is what we need to be talking about. So when you said those kids who want to do humanities, who want to go into social work, these are gaps that need to be filled in our community.
But who's marketing to them? Look, again, I'll go back to my example of the kids wanting to go to go to an MLB, a kid in a tiny little league wanting to go to the MLB. If the kids in an Islamic school don't want to become the next, Sheikh bin Baz, right? There's a problem. They should want to. Maybe it's just literally a marketing issue.
But why do they need to do that? Why can't we have the best social worker in the Muslim community and help that, right? Why can't we have the best?
Oh no, that I agree with. The only reason I'm focused on Islamic the scholars right now is simply because, well, that's what we're talking about today. That's the only reason we're focused on that today, because you're right. We do need more social workers. Yeah. We do need more this and that and the other. Like
teachers.
It's a big list.
Teachers too. Go and qualified, passionate teachers,
right?
Which they do have, but I mean, it would be great if we can.
Like, how hard would it be? And you've been in that environment, so you may already know. How hard would it be to organize a career fair that has representatives from Al-Madinah University, Al-Azhar University, Binoria down in Pakistan? All these schools send representatives, go on a tour of every single Islamic school in every single North American city and go start making presentations and saying, hey, come to our schools. They're this amazing because of X, Y, Z, whatever. And this is literally just like off the top of my head. But like,
But
would
he did
that
a
not?
smile. So
He
I
has a
want to
smile.
know.
I'm really curious about
I'm
what that
curious
smile
about
is.
the smile.
I don't think it's difficult to do. But what is it connected to? Like, if I'm going to show up to a career fair and someone from Azhar, someone from Ganuriya is there, cool. Okay, I'm motivated now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, help me get in. You know very well, like, getting into one of these universities is like, the path is never clear.
Right.
It is like, right? Like, you need connections of some sort. Like, even my story, like, I didn't plan to go to an Islamic university. It just happened because the first Arabic teacher I got, Junaid Bhai, he was doing his master's in Arabic at a university, and he's like, you don't want to do it? I'll fill out your application for you. Because I genuinely wasn't interested. I just want to sit with scholars. I don't care for the degree. And he did my application for me. He had his network handed it in for us, and then, after a year, the application went missing, and like, I don't know what happened to that. And then a year after that, someone calls me saying, "Hey, your name's in the acceptance list." So like, the career fair is great,
Right.
but we have to, for that to really work, we have to be able to allow them access to, okay, this is the path now. Let us connect you.
When it comes to building a pipeline, I think it's a long-term project. I don't think it's something that's going to happen quickly.
Agreed.
I think one of the potential areas where that pipeline could come from is from imams who grew up in the West. Because we do have those now. It's not like they don't exist anymore. We have people who, are in their mid-30s. They grew up in the West. They were from the earlier generations of immigrants. And they had this interest from wherever it came from to go abroad and study, and they came back.
Right.
And now I think they can't teach people they can't make people scholars, but they can motivate you to go study, come back. And now as that builds up, we have more people who grew up here, went, studied, came back. Now we can build the pipeline to continue to get more people to go. Because that's very motivating, right? Growing up when I was much younger and we didn't have as many of those guys, and you see all the sheikhs, okay, they don't speak good English. Okay, I don't understand what he's talking about. He's talking about his context that I don't see as a young person in the West. I can't relate with anything he's saying. Right. And so in my mind, that there's no connection between me and Islamic education, or me and this sheikh or this imam. Now that we have people who have done it, someone made the connection somehow, and he went, and now he's helping other people build that connection. I think as we build more of those figures who grew up here, who studied Islam, they have both perspectives. They can help make that connection for other people. I think that will be the catalyst to going and studying abroad and towards educating people here as well.
I think overall though, we need to, when you're saying let's look at, that consultant lens of seeing, is this system for us? I think the system's improved definitely from when I was a child. That's amazing. There's definitely gaps. We're moving in the right direction. I think it depends on your goal as a parent and as a child, right? Not everyone is going to want to go on for higher education, but we do want to build a community, and a community that we're going to be old in, right? So how do we empower these kids to have a Muslim identity, but to also get higher education in whatever they choose to do and be the best at it, right? And then that also, of the economics, if we're going to talk about that, we need people,
Well, and you make a great point there, because look, here's the deal. When it comes to starting this conversation, as soon as we start this conversation, I myself can list, a gazillion reasons on why it may not work. It's too expensive to go. The application process is too convoluted. What's my incentive in going? My career options are very limited if I do this. I'll make less money. I'll have to, maybe my family's not very religious. I'll have to fight with them. Maybe nobody actually inspired me to go, and it never even occurred to me that I might want to go. So there's a whole bunch of problems that we could talk about. And really, maybe it's not this group of people that can solve this. The reason we're having this conversation, that at some point in time, somebody who actually has the ability to solve this problem needs to open basic Word document and start building a project plan and say, okay, well, how are we going to solve the incentive problem? How are we going to solve the marketing promotion problem? How are we going to solve the support problem? Blah, 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 blah. And until we start tackling this in a little bit more structured approach, my concern is that we're not going to produce, quote unquote, the number of scholars and teachers that we actually need in this place. We're overwhelming our scholars, and I'm worried that at some point in time, and we may already be there, Allahu Alam, right? Where we will overwhelm them so much that our community doesn't have the resources that they need to be able to go and get help.
So what I would add to that is that I don't think there's I could be very wrong here. Like, I don't think there's a shortage of people who want to go abroad. Like, I think there is a group of people, right, scattered across Canada, for example, whatever, that want to go abroad, right? They're willing to take that sacrifice. But like you kind of pointed out earlier, they don't have the guidance.
Right.
Economics becomes an issue. Like, I have people that I've met, I have friends in our network, they would have loved to go. You don't have to convince them that, you should go abroad to study. So I think part of it is like going back to the whole career fair idea. If you just had like an agency model where you just have people helping students with their applications, where do you want to apply? Right, we'll help you get there. We have these connections, right? And if we can build on that and maybe even provide scholarships to some,
Right.
add that scholarship element, that can help students. And I think that will help. I don't want to say motivate, because I think students are motivated. Like someone like him, he's already motivated. He just needs a path that makes sense.
I know people who became unmotivated to go abroad and study because the idea of when am I going to get married?
Right.
Genuinely, that's I know multiple people who that's what's holding them back. Okay, I did my university. I'm 22, and now what? I'm going to go study for 6 years. I'm going to be 28 when I get back. I have no career. What's happening now?
Right.
That's another. That's like one big thing. And as he's saying, we need a path like that makes sense. Right? The path that you come back and start my career at almost 30 doesn't make sense, because how am I going to have a family? How am I going to provide for them? It seems to be like two contradicting things that which you want to fulfill, right?
Amazing. I love it. So then comes back to Islamic schools. Again, going back to that exact same thing. It feels like we have such an amazing resource and infrastructure. If we're not utilizing it effectively, we've got a problem. But one of the things that exists in Islamic schools is that they're operating too much in silos.
Yes.
Right? Every Islamic school
Can we talk about
operates.
that?
Please, let's
Yeah.
do that, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got, again, from qualification of teachers to their fee structure, to their services that they're able to offer, or extracurriculars that they're able to offer their children. I know it would be very difficult to convince and to build some sort of a standardization model, but I would love if that were
I
possible.
think that needs to happen first before we go to any other conversation.
So there's no HMA that
There's no HMA
covered
for schools, buddy.
for schools? Okay.
No. So I'll tell you what my favorite example is. Have you seen The Godfather? Okay. Well, the 5 gangster families in New York at that time, and they have a meeting every once in a while. They come sit together and they talk about the state of the city. I'm like, if gangsters can have a committee where they talk about the entire city and their issues, why can't schools?
I don't have an answer, but I'm sad that we don't have an answer, because I think, us growing up, at least those here, we saw how the different masjids, right, would have their own way of doing things. So if someone had a disagreement, they're like, well, we're going to open up our own masjid, right? I was hoping that mentality would have, not carried on into our generation, but it has.
It has, and it exists in schools as well.
So yes, it's great we have so many options. Yes, it's great we have options for different price points, right? Because financially, some people cannot, the economics of it, afford private Islamic school. But why are we reinventing the wheel so many times is what I don't understand. And I know this is there's layers to it, but I think we would have made a bigger impact if we had some more unity between schools.
Right. I'll tell you, it would take a very creative problem-solving mind to be able to do that. Because
Yeah.
I could, like I did before,
Yeah.
what we've all been doing is throw 1,000 reasons why not, why it won't work, right? If
Yeah.
if I'm in Islamic school
Yeah.
and you ask me to come and standardize, it'll say, well, I can't charge my parents any more money because they're already tapped out, right? Which means I can't pay more to my teachers, which means all these teachers that are certified will want more money. I'm not going to be able to pay them.
They'll leave to the public board. Not all. Not all. But when you talk about turnover, there's quite a few people, once they get into the teaching profession, would love to stay in that Islamic school environment, but have to go to the public board, also because they have families. And how do you support a family? Right? Right? So you need to get those benefits.
Right,
And
but what's in it for me? I'm the Islamic school. I don't want to.
So-
I don't want to sign up for your little standardization program.
The only way you would do it is if there's a governing body that can connect you to funding.
There you go. Finding the right incentive. That's a great point. Yeah. So we need to start with the waqf.
Both of us.
I mean, I might get the province wrong. So you might need to edit that out. But I think it's Alberta, right? That does have government funding for Islamic schools. I think we need to be creative in finding some support somewhere, right? So, I mean, it's not like an easy fix or it's going to be like, okay, how do we get that funding? How do we now pay our teachers, our great teachers, more so they're incentivized to stay, and then uplift facilities, provide that overall holistic education, help those kids who are gifted, help those kids who need more support, right? So we're looking at everybody. And then we can, I guess, help whatever that child's passion is, whether it's science, whether it's journalism, whether it's going to Medina. But it needs to start. I think we need to go back so many more steps before we even get to.
So it's the standardization that you feel could potentially be
standardization
a good start.
And funding.
Right. Okay. So the funding, your point about public funding or getting government funding, I feel like John Tory lost his premier election for that on that very point, getting public funding for private schools, private religious schools. He was saying, well, Catholic schools get it. Why can't other religious schools get it? And that was that was actually one of the major reasons he lost. So we know that getting government funding is a challenge. I'm not saying it's impossible. Nothing really is. But that's a challenge. It would need to come internally from us by way of waqf or by way of other organizations saying, okay, we're going to separate a certain amount for that side, or starting from scratch, or whatever that solution might be. But we need to sort of probably figure out.
I mean, we're raising millions from masajids anyways.
We are.
Right? And how much of that money could have gone to, and not that we don't need masajids, there's a need. But how much money is actually going into activism? How much money is actually going into lobbying? Right? So this is one of those needs that I think, if we can raise enough awareness.
Brother, it'll come right back to the incentive conversation. If I'm the masjid, why am I losing any of my funding? Why am I giving up any of my money?
It's not going to come from the masjid. You're going to have to raise awareness.
After his awareness.
Outside
exactly. Right? And then it comes right back to marketing. We need a nice promotional campaign. You know what I'm saying? Like there's genuine challenges. We understand that. My whole objective here is, well, let's start at least talking about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, who's working on the waqf? Who's working on this project?
And
right?
the standards. Yeah.
And building the standards, right?
Yeah,
Because once you start talking about standards, then it's going to be another can of worms. Well, what goes into these standards? Right?
It is.
It's going to be a big discussion.
And maybe a very hard discussion.
A very hard discussion, possibly.
But we
yes.
need to have the
we
discussion.
Need to have that discussion. That's exactly the point. You're right. Right? So, one of the things, inshallah, that I want to do as a add-on to this podcast is I'm starting I don't know if it'll be a website or maybe something like a Substack or something, is put a summary of the actual conversation, but then also, inshallah, I want to create some mock-up business cases on some of these potential solutions and post them, right? So again, if any of our My3 listeners want to go pull it up and take some action upon it, I hopefully they will have something tangible that they can use after a while. If you guys wouldn't mind, when I'm working on those documents, if it's okay, I'd love to be able to ask you for a little bit of support, share some your opinions, and right. So hopefully we can get that process started just a little bit, because there's a few solutions. Like, so I started off with the standard and standardization concept, share curriculums, accreditation standards, teachers training,
yes,
right, teacher training. networking between schools and masajid to support that learning
Yes.
continuity.
Yes.
Right. So just that standardization concept could have all of that. I put scholarship pathways, right? Formal mentorship to prep programs, what you were talking about, as you're putting in applications, teacher development and retention, pay equity and ongoing training for teachers, stuff like that could be in play. Parental and community buy-in, right?
I think that's huge,
That's
to
massive.
be honest. Like,
That's massive.
I think that's such a, if we don't talk about that, I think everything else is not going to work.
Right.
Right? So we need to have parental buy-in, meaning do parents, and I think most do, right? But do they understand that that responsibility is theirs?
Right.
Because Allah has given you children, they're an amana. It is your responsibility to set them up for success.
Right.
Which includes teaching them their deen, which includes, the manners and how to be a community leader and a builder. That needs to come first. I don't know if everyone shares that, because again, like I said, there's a lot of judgment.
Sometimes they don't disagree. Sometimes they just don't understand.
Or everyone thinks they're doing the right thing. And I'm like, you know what? You're all doing the right thing, right? So why are the Islamic school parents like, oh, well, your kid send your kid to public school? Public school parents are like, you homeschool? And everyone, like, that meme where the 3 Spider-Mans are like pointing?
That's
it's
exactly
literally
what we're doing,
what it is. And a friend of mine, we would go to some of the homeschooling field trips and we would sit there and we're like, everyone's doing an amazing job, right? With the resources that you have, why is one person right and one person's wrong? One parent's making granola, one parent's feeding their kid bear paws. I'm the bear paw mom, but that's fine. I think at the end of the day, we all love our kids. We all want our kids to do well. I think once we get past of I'm right, you're wrong. Do you see what I mean? At that level. And then inshallah, that will carry up to the Islamic schools being like, okay, we all have the same mission and vision. We all have the same intention. I think intention is key. What is your intention?
Exactly.
Right? School is a business. I get that. I mean, one of the complaints that I would get from parents when our kids were going to Islamic school was like, oh, it should be for free. I'm like, you guys are not understanding the economics of running a school. There is a lot of cost and blood, sweat, and tears involved. It's very hard. Let's give kudos to those who are running it and understand that if it wasn't an Islamic school and it was something else that was going to benefit your kid, would you be negotiating tuition? You'd be paying. So why is it when it comes to Islamic school, there's some parents who are like, well, it should be free or the tuition should be fees. Are we valuing all the hard work that the individuals are not organizations are doing right now? And are we actually supporting them? Or are we like, I want you to give me this, but I'm paying this. Why? But then it's never going to get to here if we're not.
Oh, it's so complicated though, right? Because sometimes that school is also considering, well, there's a lot of people who can't pay this. So they can only pay this. Let me make it reasonable for them.
Agreed. And they're doing an amazing job with this. But then as a community, we cannot expect this if we don't want to pay.
Agreed.
So maybe we do need to have Islamic schools that are standardized.
Right.
But different price points.
Possibly.
I don't know if that's a solution.
Right, yeah.
But that standardization for sure needs to be there. Because like our kids, it was great. Early elementary, I think it filled a need.
Right.
Like you said, after 3rd grade, it didn't work for you. We were in a different system by then. I don't know if it would have worked for us.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
I think the expectations for Islamic school are some people don't understand what the schools realistically can do. And the thing is, okay, so I teach in the Quran program. It's not a school, but it's like we have full-time kids who come 6 hours a day. And when you're with a kid for 6 hours, you can tell what he's like with his parents. You can tell what the situation is at home. And you can tell how much you can do. There's like there's an understanding. There was a sheikh I had here before I moved. He told me that I'll have this happen sometimes where some parents will drag their 18-year-old kid to my office and tell me, oh, he has a girlfriend, he's doing this, fix him. What do you want me to do? Where have you been for the last 18 years? Right? Like, okay, I can teach Islam. I can do a certain amount of things. This is beyond my capabilities. Like we've been saying, we have to work together, schools and parents. You have to have both. You can't have just one. We have one of my fellow teachers was telling me this. He teaches in a different masjid as well. He was saying we had a kid come in, 12 years old. He doesn't know how to make wudu. He has no idea how anything about Islam. And his mom comes in two months later. Why isn't my kid religious now? Who do you think
Because
we
it's
are?
that checkbox, right? Like, I'm going to send them, so I've checked this box. So it's like out of sight, out of mind, right? I've sent them to some sort of Islamic something,
And that's it. Yeah.
and that's it. But it doesn't work that way. We have Islamic schools as an alternative to supplement.
Yeah. It can't be the whole
It
solution.
can't be the whole
Can be
solution.
the whole solution, and a lot of times we're sending our children there because we are too scared of something else, right? Sometimes it's the education that they're getting at school, some of the propaganda that happens in public schools. So we're not really expecting the school to do a whole lot more than not give them X. What they're getting is irrelevant.
Just not this.
You know what I'm saying?
But then even that. So basically, you're saying as parents, we're not equipped to have those hard conversations.
Sometimes some of us
Which
are. Some of us
I
are in that position. Yeah.
1000% agree, right?
Yeah.
But then we need to have people in the community that can help us have those hard conversations.
I think we've been talking a lot about the parents' job. We've been talking a lot about the Islamic school's job. Neither one can do it alone. And I think we've all understood that, because if you're at school, you have your kid for 6-7 hours, and the rest of the kid's doing whatever other influences they have. Same with the parent. You only have a certain amount of hours with the kid. You said 15 minutes for a dad, and then the kid has all these other influences. All those influences need to be controlled into, like, we have a beneficial influence in every area, right? And this is why I was saying the number one benefit for me from Islamic school, yeah, we learned the basics of Islam and all this stuff. The main benefit was the friends I made, because I spend time with them. I talk to them online. There's so much influence I get from them. And my mom, she didn't handpick my friends, but she made her friends, and then I became friends with her friends' kids and all this stuff. So now I have, my influence at home, my influence at school, my influence with my friends as well has all been something beneficial, because my parents put the effort in to make sure it was, right? If you can't have a beneficial influence yourself and not make sure your kid other influences are beneficial, because that's going to counteract what you're doing.
Right.
If you have one beneficial influence, you send your kids to after school Quran program 2 hours, 2 hours a day for the whole week. That's going to be overcome by all these other influences.
Right.
You need to have a whole system set in place, not just one individual thing.
I love it. I love it so much.
This is, you don't remember, but when he was so small, but that's carried on, right? Our mommy and me, when we were all, had our kids and they were small, but we had the same intention, but we still wanted to also have a community for ourselves and a social support for new moms. And that friendship's carried, but because we had that intention that we want to not only learn ourselves, but support each other, and then give opportunities for our kids to meet other like-minded kids.
Yeah.
And that's lasted.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
So I feel like the three of us have just sat down and talked about a whole bunch. This is wrong, and that is wrong, and that is wrong, and this won't work.
Here's all the problems.
Please solve it for us.
Yeah. How do we fix this?
How do we fix this, Sheikh?
So I think what you've been talking about, bringing parents together, I think it's very important. And when we talk about, and I understand this might not land the right way because I don't have kids myself, but I feel like when I was in high school, I'm a product of the public school system, right? And in a high school where, other than maybe one or two, all my friends, all my network of 12, 15 guys, they were all drinking, they were all involved in drugs in some capacity. When I think about what really protected me in high school, when I go back and think about this, I really don't know. And essentially, I think it was my mom's dua.
I was going to say it's your mom's dua, yeah.
Because we were just like right on the edge. It's just that one wrong move and you're right there. So, but what protected me and not him or X, Y, Z? Like, why? I think it really goes back to the parents' dua, and I think we just don't talk about it. We don't talk about the godly element of, what dua can do, parents' dua for their kids. Most of us don't make dua, period, right? But living in the West, we commonly hear, I've heard this in the halaqah, Allah knows what's in my heart, why do I need to ask him, right? That's a different discussion altogether. But a parent's dua goes a long way for their kids.
So can I ask you a question then?
Absolutely.
About your social circle. So how did that come about? Like, were they just guys in your school and they were like the fun guys and you just kind of gravitated towards that? I'm just curious, like how were you involved in that, but then also stayed away from stuff?
It's a good question, but
So I think, so I wasn't allowed to go out as much.
Okay.
It didn't matter who it was. I just wasn't allowed to go.
Yeah.
I wasn't even allowed to go out to watch a movie with friends until I think the first time that ever happened was like grade 11.
Okay.
So my parents were very obsessed with everything happens in the house, right? You want to hang out with friends, bring them to the house. So even when we
Okay.
were pulling all-nighters to study, and those really don't work. It just end up being hangout sessions. Like guys can relate to, yeah. So my parents were like, okay, sure, you want to have that? Your friends come over, right? And now, automatically, if my friends are coming over to my house and they know how my parents are,
They're not going to do
they're not going to bring
X,
certain
Y,
things in that,
Z.
right? They're going to behave a
Yeah.
certain way. So I think that protected me a
Okay,
lot.
but then sorry, I don't want to turn this into a psychology-like thing, but then how are you okay with having a curfew? Like, as a guy, if your mom's saying you can't go to a movie and now it's grade 11, I think most kids nowadays would push back and be like, I'm going to a movie, right? So how did you feel about that? Obviously, hindsight's 2020. I think
Yeah.
when we all look back, we're like, okay, our parents did it,
Yeah.
the best that they did, and they had wisdom in why they did what they did. But as a kid, how did you feel about that?
I wasn't all that bothered either
Really?
because I knew the network I'm dealing with as well,
Okay.
right? But it was also there wasn't that much friction either.
Okay.
Where like if I could have pushed back and gotten a little bit more leeway, or they could have pushed back, and
So you didn't really care that you didn't.
yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Because
But they were also coming to the house,
think
so you still had your
I still
social
had, yeah,
interactions.
I still
Okay,
had that,
interesting.
and I still realized at that point that even though they're my friends, I probably should not be hanging out with them. And I did eventually cut
Okay.
them out in university, which, I mean, in hindsight, wasn't the best of decisions because you cut out your friends and then you try to reconnect afterwards and you're like, where have you been all these years? Right? But it protected.
Interesting.
I had a similar issue with my friends from high school, non-Muslim. I had like a Muslim group and a non-Muslim group. Because I met the non-Muslim guys first, and I slowly got into the Muslim group, but I still had these guys. After we graduated, now everyone's 18, everyone's above age, and some guys were traveling for university. Everyone came back for like the summer, and we were like, okay, let's meet up. And now these guys weren't willing to meet up without alcohol, right? And I was like, okay. We did a camping trip one time before. We said no alcohol. Someone bought alcohol, and for me, it was really uncomfortable, right? And for the other two Muslim guys there, it was very uncomfortable. So now you guys are telling me we're not going to hang out without alcohol. I was like, okay, either I'm not coming or there's no alcohol. Like, pick one. And they made their decision. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm still on good terms with them, right? If I see them, I'll talk to them. But we don't meet up anymore. And I guess as someone growing up, you have to know how to make that decision. And a lot of people won't know how to make that decision. I can't blame them because it's a very difficult choice to make, right? Your friends who you've been with for however many years, you're gonna overlook things to try and hang out with them.
So I'm going to bring things back to Islamic education just as a final roundtable for a close. I'm going to ask a question of each of you. Again, pertaining specifically to Islamic education, not necessarily Islamic schools or not necessarily scholarship pipeline, just this Islamic education system as it exists. If I were to give you, and Islam, let me start with you actually, just for fun. If I were to give you a magic wand and say, okay, you have the power to change one thing, any one thing, right? What would that be?
One thing. That's a very difficult question.
I know it is.
I wish we had a system to, within an Islamic school or a masjid environment or anywhere where we're teaching Islam, place people at the level where they are and based on what they can reach. So we understand when a student comes to us what he is capable of learning and what he should learn. One of the issues with Islamic school, in not a masjid, like a Islamic school where you're going in a grade system, is okay. We did Islamic education last year. We did Islamic studies. We did Quran. We did Arabic, and now that was in grade 4. Now we're in grade 5. A new kid joined. He didn't learn any of that stuff. Okay, he's not at the level that his classmates are at. Are we going to put him with the younger students? Probably not, because he's not gonna like that. He's not gonna enjoy that environment. But he's not ready for what these guys are learning either. And so because of that, our education in Olive Grove, Islamic education, was often, to no fault of the schools, because there's no system to fix this, was very repetitive because you keep having to catch up the new students, right? I've been there since grade 1. Now a new guy joined in grade 8. He's in the same grade as me. We're not gonna put him with the grade 1 kids because he's gonna hate himself and he's gonna hate the school and he's gonna hate everyone. But now I'm not gonna learn anything new because I have to be in his class.
Right.
I wish we had a system where that somehow, I don't know how again, magic wand, that's not an issue anymore. We can put him in a situation where he can learn what he needs to learn with people with people who he can learn with, not with the grade 1s, so that people can get the education they want, and they want and they need both. Because if they don't want it, they're not going to learn. And if they don't need it, they're not going to benefit. You need to have both.
No, that's actually really amazing. So basically do the teaching based on levels, not age groups.
Yes.
Right? Like break that down separately. Subhanallah, that's an amazing idea.
I know. So we're done.
Sister Kausar?
I mean, I would say that's not that situation also happens overseas because it's so transient. People leave, people come. So now you're repeating the same lesson. Doesn't matter what grade you're in. And I found there was one school that my kids were at for about 3 years, and Islamic school, like their Islamic studies class, it didn't change. It was the same story every year because new kids would join, but you don't want to. So I think that's amazing. And I think I would love if we could all get on the same page. I mean, you're saying magic wand, right?
Magic wand, go for it, please.
Yeah. I would love if we were all on the same page and we all be united in our intention to uplift the community, which doesn't mean there's only one Islamic school.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I think it's great that we have variety and diversity because, like I said, every kid is going to thrive in whatever situation that they're in. Maybe that means offering quality Islamic education outside of school for those kids who are thriving in homeschooling. It doesn't have to be, okay, this is the curriculum. Let's offer different options.
Right. Well, so the thing is, I love your idea. It opens up another layer, can of worms, because Sunday schools and weekend schools are a whole other conversation. It's a complicated conversation. Sometimes they're great. Other times they're so not great at all. Right. So, but having
100%, there's stories.
There's stories all over the
But
place.
I do feel like that really helped instill something for me growing up in a predominantly non-Muslim. Like when I was growing up, there was no Credit Valley Hospital. There was no Air Mills Town Center. Like it was just farmland. Right. So I'm coming from a different thing. So I think now that we have these options, and I get it, Sundays, and any solution is going to have its layers, right?
Yes.
I wish we could all get on the same page and standardize those layers.
Right.
And standardize those options. So whatever a parent does choose, whether it's Islamic school or public school or homeschooling, they have access, not just to education, but good social circle, right?
Right.
I think parents kind of need to behind the scenes engineer who their kids like the way Sarah did, the way I'm doing, the way Mubina's doing, right? To try to social engineer who your kids can be friends with, because it just makes things easier.
Love it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a slightly different route. So I wish, I mean, if I had the magic wand, I wish we were able to create like an Oculus experience of kids and adults looking into the snapshots of our history, different periods and what it led to. Like like for example, the case of Imam al-Ghazali, what he represented for Sunni scholarship at the time, and how that one thing leading to another eventually led to the conquering of Jerusalem, right, by Salah ad-Din, and how there's a direct link between the two, and that it didn't just happen with 50 years. It took time, right? And something like that can give so much confidence to our youth. Parents will be like, I want my kid to be the next Ghazali.
Right.
Let him go study, right? I'll finance him, right? That sort of thing. I think that could lead to a nice, interesting awakening in the Ummah.
That's amazing. Because we need to highlight our role models, right? Which we try, but not in a fun way. That the kids are going to be like, okay, yeah, I need to learn about the Sahaba. I need to learn about the companions, because it's not
right. So again, also, but the fun way is we need, like, for some reason, we have a difficulty understanding what the fun way is, right? Like even when we try the fun way, it ends up not being that fun for the child
I don't think
itself.
We're talking to the kids.
That's what I'm saying. We're coming up with everything on our own.
Yeah, we need to involve them in the conversation.
Right?
Which we haven't.
No. Right?
Yeah.
So for me, if I had a magic wand, I would establish a inter-Islamic school sports league.
Yes.
And make
they don't have that?
They don't have that.
Seriously?
I thought they not
did.
properly.
Oh, really? Week one?
Like when I was in Olive Grove, if we were on the soccer team, we played other
Islamic schools.
But there was like 3 teams we would play.
Okay, never mind.
Right, yeah.
But like to bring it up to a
bring
level
it up where every school is being a part of it.
Ontario level thing.
Ontario level thing or something along those lines, and I would make it mandatory for
Yeah.
every parent of that has a child in one of those schools to coach for at least an X amount of time in some capacity, to be involved in that.
You need to
involved in
encourage
that
your
in a
athletic
little bit.
kids, your creative kids, your
Yes.
athletic kids, your This is what I'm saying. We need to have a myriad of options.
Exactly.
Right?
Like we need that inner school relationship there,
Yes,
whether it's even if
yes.
it's a hate relationship, even if it's a rivalry, I'll take that.
Okay.
Have some relationship.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought there was, but if you're saying it's just 3 schools,
There was
then
3
that's not
schools,
really.
and they would meet once a year. They'd do one big tournament, and that's it.
But then everyone gets a medal because it's only 3 schools.
It was like 3 or 4. Like, you know, it's very, very little. It ranged. A little
How
bit,
centric
but
on soccer was it?
The soccer had more than 3 schools. The basketball had like 3 schools.
Okay.
You know, like, we had volleyball
But
too. I don't know.
I
how
get
many,
what you're
you know,
saying.
Right?
Offer different sports, but a proper league.
A proper league, yeah.
Yeah, kids take pride in that.
Make it standard, yeah.
And then the team building and being part of a team. I mean, that's so important.
All right.
Those are life skills.
Inshallah, that is in that same vein, that it's maybe a start to that standardization conversation or something along those lines, right? Like, wallahu alam. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing conversation with all 3 of you. And can I just say, I'm so proud of you, buddy.
Yeah,
My problem is that he's a butcher, like him, for me, him, and
but
they're the same, right?
But a very mature butcher.
Yeah, so proud of you, buddy. But well done. Jazakallah khair so much for coming on. I think all of your insight, your perspectives are very welcome, and they were amazing. I had a wonderful time talking to all of you. To everybody who listens, thank you once again for tuning in to You Tell Me, a Canadian Muslim podcast. If today's discussion made you think, sparked questions, or reminded you of something happening in your own community, please share your thoughts with us in the comments. We want this space to be one where honest conversations can lead to real change. And if you're wondering what now, what can we actually do with the ideas we explored today? Well, stay tuned, inshallah. We're trying to, in the coming days, try to release a follow-up piece with summary of today's episode, key takeaways, and some concrete suggestions we discussed. So anyone who wants to take action has a place to start. Whether you're a parent, educator, school board member, or just someone who cares, we hope it'll be a useful resource. Oh Allah, we thank you for allowing us to come together in this meaningful conversation. Forgive us for any shortcomings and accept from us the good that we have shared. Strengthen our faith and grant us the ability to act on what we have learned. Oh Allah, accept this effort from us and make it a means of goodness. Keep us steadfast on the straight path and unite our hearts in love and understanding. Ameen. Until next time, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.